Anyway, the next thing we're going to talk about is Scott Adams was canceled. He recently was talking about race. He said, I'll just paraphrase. He was citing a Rasmussen poll where they asked black people if it's okay to be white, and I think 25% said no, and I think 24% or
There was
something
like,
said unsure
yeah,
or
something
I
like
don't
that.
know, and maybe 53% said yeah, it's okay to be white. In response, he said, my solution is that white people should stay away from black people. If this poll is accurate, it means that black people as a whole are some kind of hate group because they don't even accept white people's right to existence. And, you should just stay away from them because if they don't accept you, then it's probably not good to be around them. Of course, he was canceled. And by this, I mean really canceled. Like his comic strip was canceled from a bunch of publications. So that's real cancellation.
That might just increase sales of all Dilbert
It could, but
comics.
regardless, I think it fits the technical definition of cancel.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So he did not apologize. He doubled down. And my take on this is that, well, first of all, a lot of people just like to quote the second part where he said, stay away from black people. And that, of course, is sort of butchering the context. He said, if this Rasmussen poll is true, then stay away from black people. So that's the full context. And I don't agree with him on certain things. I agree with him that if it's true that black people don't think it's okay, or they don't think it's okay for white people to exist, or almost half of them don't think that, then yes, there's no reason for you to be comfortable living amongst them. And how do I know? How can I defend this? Well, what if you just flip the races? What if there was a poll of white people and I asked them, hey, is it okay to be black? And half of them said, no, it's not okay. Or a quarter of them said it's not okay. And a quarter of them said they're not really sure if it's okay. I would not blame black people for being uncomfortable with white people or living near them if that was the breakdown statistically. It would be fair for them to feel maybe a little unsafe or they just don't want to take the chance of living close to them. Okay? So if you flip the races, it seems perfectly reasonable. And in fact, I can't prove it, but I'm almost sure that you probably have, well-respected intellectuals say something like this, right? Say something like white people are racist, white people are bad, and so black people should just probably stay away from them. I bet you anything this thing has been said and nobody
It's
has been
probably been,
canceled.
yeah, much worse than that.
That person, yeah, person probably got a job at the New York Times right after, right?
Exactly.
So that's how I know the sentiment, the logic of the sentiment is okay. Where I will disagree is that, well, first of all, some people have criticized the Rasmussen poll itself. They have said, well, they're just polling 1,000 people. That's not a good
Was that,
sample size. And
was that
here
where did you see the criticism? Because I didn't see that.
on Twitter, I saw some people say the sample size is trash or something, right?
Okay. But it
And
wasn't
this
like New York Times or something.
No, 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 no. This is uneducated people would say something like this, okay? Because, and this is a pet peeve of mine, you often get people who question the sample size of things. They say something like, "How can 2,000 people represent an America that has 360 million people in it?" Like, well, you clearly never taken statistics or done a course on polling, and that's fine. Lots of people haven't, but let me educate you. 1,000 to 2,000 people, provided that the sample was rigorously crafted, meaning it does represent the larger group of people, is pretty good. It's accurate enough. You get like a plus or minus 3 margin of error, okay? Would 10,000 be better? Yes. Would 20,000 be better? Yes. Would 360 million be better? Absolutely. However, guess what? It's diminishing returns. I mean, you just get your plus or minus 3 margin of error. You just get it down to like 2.5 and then 2 and then like 1.8. It's really not worth it. And it's just
Yeah.
accurate enough. Okay.
Which wouldn't
So
it
I know
wouldn't
it sounds
change.
like one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
There's
sounds like
already like
1,000 is not enough.
50%. Yeah.
Right. It sounds like 1,000 is not enough. But believe me, that number is, there's a reason why every poll you see is between 1,000 and 2,000 people. Okay. My criticism of his interpretation of the poll would be that when you ask people, is it okay to be white? And they say yes or no. The people who are responding could be bringing certain context and background into this, such as remember when there were a lot of like edgy boys and trolls putting posters of it's okay to be white around college campuses and stuff, and then the mainstream media told you these are all white supremacists and things like that. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not here to argue. I don't personally think so, but that's not important. What is important is if, let's say, you saw a bunch of news stories where you associated that phrase with white supremacists, then you might interpret this question as, oh, is this white supremacist slogan okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with the people who said unsure. They might be thinking, are you asking me if it's literally okay that this person is white? Or are you asking me if this phrase is okay? And maybe the people who, as I understand it, typically use this phrase, if they're okay. I'm not quite understanding the question here, right? So
Yeah.
the respondents could be coming at it with all of these different interpretations that are loaded with this background that, colors the nature of this question. And if that's the case, I could totally see a bunch of people saying, no, it's not okay. But what they're really saying is, I don't agree with, the people who have used this phrase because I think they're white supremacists, right?
Yeah.
They're not saying, oh, I think that, yeah. If I have a neighbor and they're white, I think they should be shipped off to a gulag or something. They're not saying that in their mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like they're trying to be controversial. Like they're trying to reach a controversial result, right? Because what the fuck does that even mean? Is it okay to be white? Like,
right.
What does that actually mean?
And as a person who has taken courses about conducting polls, I can tell you that it's a bad poll question. It needs to be way more specific. It needs to ask something like, if you had a white neighbor, would you be more likely to move away because of that white neighbor? Or do you think that white neighbor should not be allowed to live next to you? You need to ask a specific question like that.
Yeah, and it would be interesting, like, of the 26% that disagreed, what kinds of other beliefs do these people have? Like, do they think, does that mean, should we just kill white people?
Right.
Like, you can't tell.
Yeah,
However,
the question is bad.
Yeah, the question is bad. However, given the current environment, I guess I don't find the result too surprising.
I agree. I think that it's clear to me it's just okay to be racist against white people these days. I mean, it's just much more okay than it ever was, and it probably should be. So do I think that there are a significant number of people who just feel totally fine thinking that it's not okay to be white? Like, literally, it's not okay. Your whiteness is a problem.
Right. So exactly. So then you ask these people, okay, so then what should that white person do?
Right. However, just this one question in isolation, I don't think it's conclusive. So while I do agree with the underlying...
Like you can substitute in, LGBT, right? Is it okay to be LGBT? And then, the same people would be like, oh, well, they can't do anything about it, right? That's just the way they were born or whatever. I think it's trying to get at this underlying anti-white sentiment that I think has grown, unfortunately. But I don't think it does a good job of capturing it, because I don't think that fully 50% of black people are just not okay with white people existing. I have a hard time believing that. I think there is a percentage. What about the 26%?
Even that, I think that a lot of those people are associating it with, what they've heard about this phrase, right? I think it needs to be asked in a more neutral way. Like, if you had a neighbor who was white, what would you, stuff like that. And it needs to be more specific. I don't deny that this anti-white sentiment has grown and it exists. It's an undercurrent that we're dealing with. However, I don't think this poll does a good job of capturing it. So he's basing his statement on the idea that fully half of black people are not okay with white people. I don't think that's accurate. I think it's less than half. I think it's greater than zero, but I don't think it's half. So
it definitely doesn't seem fair to lump in the 21% not sure.
Based on what he said, assuming this poll is accurate, this is my advice. I can't disagree with him. However, I don't think he should assume this poll is accurate, because there are problems with it. So
what about,
he shouldn't have even gone down this road.
Okay. So what about the fact that all the coverage is now focused on Scott Adams and not the result of the Rasmussen poll?
Well, that is another indicator of anti-white bias, right? Because the problem is, we just default to the problem being the white guy, right? Almost nobody dares to even mention that, hey, is this an issue that the poll results are as such? Is that a problem? Should we be worried about this? Nobody, or very few people outside of, edgy boys on Twitter are mentioning that.
It should be mentioned.
It should be mentioned. And despite the fact that I have problems with the way the poll is conducted, it deserves to be talked about, because I think there is this undercurrent.
The poll was, it's okay to be black. And,
and white people said no.
or not sure. I mean, I would just, of course, I would say okay. I would say agree. I mean, it's like there wouldn't be.
Well, I don't think it's a good poll, and therefore it wasn't a good decision for him to say something based on assuming if this poll is true.